Candace Ann Davis had scrubbed blood out of marble floors enough times to recognize when a decision could get you killed. But standing in Minho Choi's glass office above Seoul, hands clasped so tight her knuckles ached, heart hammering against her ribs, she asked anyway, "Sir, could you be my husband for one day?" The ghost tiger of Seoul didn't blink. He didn't laugh. He didn't even look surprised. He just leaned forward, and for the first time since she'd started working in his penthouse, Candace understood why they called him the most dangerous man in Korea. "Before we dive into this story, hit that subscribe button," my friend said. "I'll never reach 1,000 subscribers, and I'm determined to prove them wrong. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from." Candace Ann Davis's hands trembled as she dusted the obsidian sculpture in Minho Choi's penthouse, one of dozens she'd carefully cleaned over the past 8 months. She'd perfected the art of being invisible, eyes down, movements quiet, never humming the reggae songs her mother used to sing, never speaking unless spoken to. It was survival. In a world where powerful men like him existed in one realm, and women like her scrambled in another, invisibility kept you breathing. In Seoul's glittering Gangnam district, where Minho's penthouse sat like a glass crown above the city, invisibility meant you didn't end up a casualty of whatever dark business happened behind those floor-to-ceiling windows. But today, desperation had shattered that carefully constructed shield. "Sir." Her voice barely rose above a whisper as she stood in the doorway of his office, the place she'd been explicitly told never to enter unless summoned. The late afternoon sun streaming through the windows caught the sharp angles of his face, illuminating the intricate tattoo that curled up his neck like a serpent. Minho didn't look up from the documents spread across his glass desk. His platinum blonde hair was immaculately styled, his crisp white shirt unbuttoned just enough to reveal more ink patterns that spoke of violence, power, and a world Candace could only imagine. His hands, covered in elaborate designs that disappeared beneath his rolled sleeves, moved with precise confidence as he signed something that probably sealed someone's fate. They called him the Ghost Tiger of Seoul. She'd learned why within her first week. "I need to ask you something." The words tumbled out before courage abandoned her completely. "Something unusual." Now he looked up, dark eyes, the color of midnight, with none of its softness, fixed on her with an attention that made her skin prickle. "When Minho Choi looked at you, really looked at you, it felt like he could calculate your worth and your weaknesses in the same breath." "I'm listening," he said, his voice carrying that specific Korean formality that somehow made even simple words sound like a command. Candace swallowed hard. This was insane, impossible. But she'd run out of options 3 days ago, when her mother had video called with that specific tone, the one that meant family judgment was coming whether you wanted it or not. "I need you to..." Her throat went dry. "Sir, I need you to pretend to be my husband. Just for one day." The words echoed through the office like a confession. Mingyu didn't blink. He didn't laugh. He didn't even look surprised. Instead, he set down his pen with deliberate slowness, leaned back in his leather chair, and studied her with an intensity that made her want to disappear through the marble floor. The tattoo on his neck shifted as he tilted his head, and Candace caught sight of Korean characters inked along his collarbone, characters she'd heard his men whisper, translated to tiger and ghost. "Your husband," he repeated slowly, his accent wrapping around the English words. "You need me to pretend to be your husband. Just for one day," Candace rushed to clarify, her Jamaican accent thickening with nerves. "A family video call this Saturday. Just a few hours. I know it's crazy, I know I shouldn't even be asking, but I don't have anyone else. And..." "Why?" The single word cut through her, rambling like a blade. Candace blinked. "Why? Why did you tell them you were married?" The question hung in the air between them like smoke. What could drive a woman to ask the most dangerous man in Seoul such an impossible favor? The answer lies in a lie told 8 months ago, and a family that would never understand the truth. But what Candace didn't know was that her desperate request would unravel everything Minho Choi had built his empire to protect, including his own carefully guarded heart. 8 months earlier, Candace had been desperate for any job that paid more than her Kingston cleaning service wages. Her mother's medications were draining their savings, and her younger brother's school fees weren't going to pay themselves. When the International Employment Agency mentioned a live-in housekeeping position in Seoul, South Korea, with a salary that made her eyes water, she jumped at it without asking questions. She should have asked questions. Minho Choi's name didn't mean anything to her then. She didn't know that his import-export business was code for one of the most powerful organized crime families in South Korea. She didn't know that the other staff members avoided eye contact with him not out of respect, but out of pure primal fear. She didn't know that the security detail that flanked him everywhere carried weapons beneath their suits and had killed for him without hesitation. She learned all of this within the first week. By then, It was too late to leave. The money was too good, and her mother needed it too badly. The exchange rate meant that what seemed ordinary to Seoul's wealthy elite could transform her family's life back home. With every wire transfer, Candace could hear the relief in her mother's voice, see her brother's report card improve now that he could afford textbooks. But the money came with a price: complete discretion. No questions, no curiosity, no personal connection to the man whose penthouse she now called her workplace, where she lived in a small staff room tucked near the kitchen, decorated only with a photo of her family and a small Jamaican flag. So when her mother had video called 3 months into the job, asking why Candace never had time for family anymore, why she was always too tired to visit virtually, the lie had slipped out before she could stop it. "I met someone," Candace had said, desperate to deflect her mother's worry that something was wrong. "We're getting serious." Her mother's squeal of delight had echoed through the phone. Within minutes, her entire family knew. Within an hour, extended relatives were texting congratulations. Within a day, the lie had grown wings she couldn't clip. Aunts in Kingston were calling. Cousins in Montego Bay were messaging. Even her grandmother, who'd raised her after her father's death, was asking to meet the man who captured my granddaughter's heart. "When's the wedding?" her cousin Shanice had asked during a subsequent call, half joking but half serious. "We're taking it slow," Candace had stammered. But slow hadn't been slow enough. 2 weeks ago, her family had started planning a virtual reunion, the big kind, where relatives logged in from London and Toronto and Atlanta, the kind where everyone expected to meet the mysterious man who'd convinced Candace Ann Davis to stay 7,000 miles from home. "Bring him on the call," her mother had said in that tone that wasn't really a request. "It's time we met this man who has my daughter glowing." Glowing? That's what her mother thought. In reality, Candace barely slept, haunted by the sounds that sometimes echoed from Minho's office late at night, sharp voices speaking rapid Korean, threats delivered in tones that made her bury her head under her pillow and pretend she heard nothing. She should have confessed the truth then. Should have admitted there was no boyfriend, no relationship, nothing but a desperate lie to avoid her family's pity. But she couldn't bear it. Couldn't bear her mother's disappointed sigh, her grandmother's sympathetic headshake, her brother's concern that she'd sacrificed too much. For once, just once, she wanted them to think she was doing okay, that she hadn't given up everything, her social life, her dreams of nursing school, her own space, just to keep them afloat. So the lie had continued. And now, standing in Minho Choi's office with her heart hammering against her ribs, she was paying the price. "Your husband," Minho repeated slowly, setting down his gold pen. He stood, moving around the desk with the fluid grace of a predator. Candace forced herself not to step back as he approached, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that probably cost more than her monthly salary. "Just for one day," Candace whispered. "Saturday. Just a few hours on video. I know it sounds insane, but I told them I was married, and now they want to meet him, and I don't have anyone else, and her voice cracked, "I'll work extra hours. I'll pay you back however you want. Why?" The question came again, but softer this time. Candace's first instinct was to deflect, to give some surface explanation. But something in Minho's expression, not judgment, but genuine curiosity, made the truth tumble out. "Because I'm 26 and still cleaning houses," she whispered, her eyes burning. "Because my little brother is in 6th form, and I never even finished university. Because my mother works in a grocery store at 58, and I can't seem to earn enough to tell her to stop. Because every family gathering, they look at me with pity, and Her voice broke. "I wanted them to think I was doing okay, that someone thought I was worth..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Worth choosing." The words hung unspoken between them. Minho was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. "What did you tell them about this husband?" Hope flickered in her chest, like a candle in wind. "That he's successful," Candace said carefully. "That we met through work. That he treats me well." She paused, swallowing hard. "That he makes me happy." Something flashed across Minho's face, an emotion too quick to identify. He turned slightly, and the afternoon light caught the full scope of the tattoo along his neck. A tiger mid-strike, beautiful and terrifying. "One day," he said quietly. "Just Saturday." "Just Saturday," Candace confirmed, barely breathing. "I promise. After that, I'll never ask you for anything again. I'll go back to being invisible. You were never invisible, Candace." The words hit her like a physical blow. She looked up sharply, meeting his eyes for the first time since entering his office. Something in his gaze, Something dark and intense and impossibly focused made her pulse race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "I'll do it," Minho said, his decision made. "But on one condition." Of course there was a condition. Men like him didn't do favors without strings attached. Candace steeled herself, prepared for some impossible demand. "Tell me about your family," he said instead. "Everything. I need to know who I'm going to meet if we're going to pull this off." What Candace didn't know was that Minho Choi had noticed her from the very first day she'd walked into his penthouse. In 8 months, he'd memorized the sound of her humming old reggae songs while she worked, the way she always made sure his coffee was exactly the temperature he preferred, the dimple that appeared when she smiled at his head of security's terrible jokes, the way she said "Good morning, sir," with that lilting Jamaican accent that made even formal words sound warm. He'd told himself it was nothing. She was staff. Off limits. From a world so different from his that they might as well have lived on different planets. But now she'd asked him the one thing that shattered every wall he'd built. She'd asked him to be close to her. And Minho Choi, the ghost tiger of Seoul, a man feared by Korea's most dangerous criminals, had never been good at denying himself what he wanted. The week before, the days leading up to Saturday passed in a blur of surreal moments that Candace kept thinking she'd wake up from. Minho insisted on details. Not just names and faces, but stories. He wanted to know that her mother, Patricia Davis, had raised 2 children alone after her husband died in a car accident when Candace was 14. That her grandmother, Miss Iris, made the best curry goat in Kingston and didn't trust any man who couldn't look her in the eye. That her younger brother, Andre, was brilliant and protective and had a tendency to interrogate anyone who came near his sister. "He's going to test you," Candace warned as they sat in his office Wednesday evening. She'd grown accustomed to these evening briefings, though they still felt strange sitting across from Minho Choi in comfortable silence, watching him take notes like he was planning a business acquisition instead of a fake family reunion. "I can handle tests," Minho said dryly, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips rare enough that it made Candace's breath catch. "I've been tested by worse than protective younger brothers." The comment was dark, but it made her laugh despite herself. Over the past few days, she'd discovered that underneath the terrifying exterior was a man who noticed things. Small things, important things. He'd noticed she took her tea with honey, no sugar. He'd noticed she always touched the small Jamaican flag in her room before starting her day. He'd noticed that she wore the same comfortable shoes every day because they were probably the only ones that didn't hurt after 12 hours of work. That last observation had resulted in a package being delivered to her room Thursday morning. A box from an expensive Seoul boutique containing not just new shoes, but a complete outfit for Saturday. The note, written in Minho's precise handwriting, read, "You shouldn't worry about what to wear." The dress was beautiful, a deep burgundy that would complement her dark skin, cut in a style that was elegant without being overly formal. It fit perfectly, which meant he'd somehow figured out her size without asking. The thought should have felt invasive, but instead it made something warm bloom in her chest. She'd never had anyone pay attention to her like this. Not past boyfriends who drifted in and out of her life. Not even well-meaning friends who assumed she was fine because she always smiled. But Minho Choi noticed everything. Friday evening, Jae-hyun, Minho's head of security, a quiet man who'd always been respectfully kind to her, pulled her aside in the hallway. "Boss is taking this seriously," Jae-hyun said quietly. His weathered face creased with something that might have been concern. "You know that, right?" Candace nodded, though she wasn't sure what he meant. Of course Minho was taking it seriously. He was meticulous about everything. "I mean really seriously," Jae-hyun continued. "He's been asking questions about Jamaica, your family's neighborhood, making sure the video connection will be secure." He paused. "Minho doesn't do favors, Miss Davis. Not for anyone. The fact that he's doing this for you." He trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. But the implication hung in the air, making Candace's heart pound. No, that was impossible. Men like Minho Choi didn't notice women like her. Not in that way. This was just a transaction, a favor she'd somehow convinced him to grant. Nothing more. But that night, lying in her small room, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her during their briefing sessions. The way his attention felt like sunlight, warm, intense, focused entirely on her. The way he'd smiled when she told him about her grandmother's infamous Sunday dinners, where showing up without an appetite was considered a personal insult. "I'll make sure to come hungry," he'd said, and something in his tone had sounded like a promise. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Candace stood in her room staring at the dress laid out on her bed, her stomach tied in knots. This was insane. This was never going to work. Her family would see through it immediately. And then she'd have to confess everything, the lie, the desperate request, the fact that she'd somehow convinced a Korean mafia boss to play pretend for a day. A knock on her door made her jump. "Candace," Minho's voice, muffled through the wood. "May I come in?" She opened the door to find him dressed more casually than she'd ever seen. Dark jeans, a black button-down with the sleeves rolled to reveal the full extent of his tattoos, intricate patterns that covered his forearms like armor, beautiful and dangerous. He looked different, less like a crime lord and more like a devastatingly handsome man who might actually pass as someone's husband. "You look terrified," he observed. "I am terrified," Candace admitted. "This is a terrible idea. We should just cancel. I'll tell them you're sick. Minho caught her hand, stopping her spiral. His touch was gentle but firm, his palm warm against hers, and Candace felt the contact like electricity. "Breathe," he said quietly. "We're going to be fine. Trust me." "You're a mafia boss," Candace blurted out. "How are you going to fit in with my family from Jamaica?" Something flashed across his face, amusement mixed with something darker. "Candace, I grew up in Busan before Seoul. My grandmother cooked kimchi jjigae every Sunday and hit me with a wooden spoon when I disrespected her. I know exactly how to act at a family gathering." She blinked. She'd never thought about Minho having a childhood, having a family, having a grandmother who cooked and scolded like everyone else's. He seemed too powerful, too untouchable to have ever been an ordinary boy. "Besides," he continued, a small smile playing at his lips, "I have an advantage." "What's that?" "I don't have to pretend to think you're worth choosing." The words landed like a punch to her chest. Before Candace could process them, before she could ask what he meant, Minho squeezed her hand once and stepped back. "Get dressed," he said, his tone returning to something more controlled. "We start the call in an hour." "And Candace?" She looked up at him. "Stop being invisible," he said quietly. "At least for today." As they prepared to face her family, neither of them realized that the line between pretending and reality was already beginning to blur. Because the truth was, Minho had been falling for his maid since the day she'd first walked into his penthouse and treated him like a person instead of a monster. And Candace, she was about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the one who makes you feel safest. After Minho left her room, Candy stood frozen, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above her dresser. Her hand still tingled where he'd touched it. "You were never invisible." The words echoed in her mind like a bell she couldn't unring. She dressed mechanically, her fingers fumbling with the zipper of the burgundy dress. It fit like it had been made for her body specifically, which, knowing Minho's attention to detail, it probably had been. Through her partially open door, she could hear him moving through the penthouse, his voice low and commanding as he spoke rapid Korean into his phone. Even without understanding the language, Candace recognized the tone. Absolute authority, zero tolerance for failure. This was the man Seoul whispered about in shadows. Minho Choi hadn't built his empire by being careless. At 32, he controlled the Hwarang Syndicate, one of Seoul's most powerful criminal organizations, with networks stretching from Busan to Tokyo to Bangkok. His name alone could silence a room or empty a nightclub. Politicians took his calls. Police looked the other way. Rival gangs knew better than to test him. The tattoo crawling up his neck, the tiger mid-strike, wasn't decoration. It was a warning. He'd earned it at 19. The night he'd survived an ambush that killed 3 of his men and left him with scars across his ribs that still ached when it rained. The night he'd stopped being Kim Minho, the boy from Busan's slums, and became the ghost tiger, invisible until he struck, and always lethal. His childhood had been violence and hunger. His adolescence, survival and strategy. By 25, he'd consolidated power through a combination of intelligence, ruthlessness, and an unsettling ability to read people's intentions before they acted on them. He trusted no one completely. He showed mercy rarely, and he never let anyone get close enough to matter. Until 8 months ago, when a Jamaican woman with careful hands and a warm smile walked into his penthouse and treated him like he was human. Minho stood in his office now, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand absently tracing the tiger on his neck, a habit when he was thinking. "I need a complete background check," he said in Korean to his intelligence officer, Min Jun. Patricia Davis, Kingston, Jamaica. Her son Andre Davis, same location. Extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles. "I want to know if there are any threats, any debts, anyone who might cause problems." "Sir?" Minjun's confusion was evident. "Jamaica? This is related to—" "Just do it," Minho cut him off. "And I want it in 3 hours." He ended the call and immediately made another. "Jae-hyun, I need you to research Jamaican cultural customs, family dynamics, greeting etiquette, what's considered respectful behavior during video calls. Send me a briefing. There was a pause. Boss, are you? 3 hours, Minho repeated, then hung up. He scrolled through his contacts and dialed his personal tailor. I need something appropriate for a family introduction, he said. Conservative but not too formal. I need to look successful but not threatening. He paused, considering. Actually, send 3 options. I'll choose. After the third call, Minho set his phone down and stared at the Seoul skyline beyond his windows. He was doing too much. He knew it. Running background checks on Candace's family wasn't necessary for a fake video call. Learning Jamaican customs wasn't required for a few hours of pretending. Calling his tailor for a specific outfit for a specific impression was excessive. But Minho Choi had never done anything halfway. And if he was honest with himself, which he rarely was, this stopped being a favor the moment Candace had walked into his office, with fear in her eyes and desperation in her voice. This became personal. Minho's mind drifted back to the day Candace arrived. He'd been in a foul mood that morning. One of his shipments had been intercepted. A rival gang was making moves in Itaewon, and his patience was threadbare. When his house manager mentioned a new maid was starting, he'd barely acknowledged it. Then she'd walked in, Candice Ann Davis, with her dark skin that seemed to glow in Seoul's harsh sunlight, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, her movements efficient but not hurried. She'd bowed politely. Someone had taught her Korean etiquette, and said in accented Korean, "Good morning, Mr. Choi. I will work hard." Most people couldn't meet his eyes. She had, just for a moment, before looking away with appropriate respect. But in that moment, Minho had seen something he hadn't seen in years. Calm. Not the forced calm of someone pretending not to be afraid, but genuine steadiness. Like she'd survived worse than him and come out stronger. Over the following weeks, he'd noticed more. The way she hummed old reggae songs while cleaning, soft, melodic, like she was keeping herself company. The way she always left his coffee exactly how he liked it without being told twice. The way she smiled at Jae-hyun's terrible jokes, bringing lightness to a penthouse that usually felt like a fortress. The way she never looked at him like he was a monster. She looked at him like he was just a man. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and completely impossible to ignore. An hour before the video call, Candace found Minho in the living room, surrounded by papers. "What is all this?" she asked, stepping closer. Minho looked up, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He'd changed into a charcoal gray sweater that somehow made him look both sophisticated and approachable. The tattoos on his neck visible but not aggressive. His platinum hair styled but not severe. He looked like someone's husband. "Background information," he said simply, gesturing to the documents. "Your mother works at Superplus Grocery in Kingston. Your brother Andre attends Calabar High School. Impressive, by the way. He plays cricket and wants to study engineering. Your grandmother, Miss Iris, lives in the same neighborhood and makes the best curry goat in Kingston." He glanced up. "Did I get that right?" Candace stared at him. "How do you—" "I have resources," Minho said, as if that explained everything. "Your cousin Shanice lives in London now, works in marketing. Your Uncle Winston is in Toronto. Your Aunt Margaret just moved to Atlanta." He tapped another page. "Your family is spread out, but Kingston is home base. You researched my entire family?" Candace's voice came out strangled. "Of course." Minho said it like it was obvious. "If I'm going to convince them I'm your husband, I need to know who they are, what they value, what they'll ask about." He picked up another document. "I also learned that in Jamaican culture, family approval is critical, that respect for elders is paramount, that bringing up achievements without being asked is considered boastful, but deflecting compliments is rude." Candace sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. This is too much. "This is necessary," Minho corrected. He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "Candace, if we're doing this, we're doing it properly. I don't do things halfway." "But why?" The question burst out of her. "Why do you care so much? It's just a video call. Just a few hours of pretending." Minho was silent for a long moment. "Because," he finally said, his voice quieter, "you asked me, and you never ask for anything." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning Candace wasn't sure she could unpack. Jae-hyun appeared in the doorway, holding a tablet. "Boss, the cultural briefing you requested." Minho took it without looking away from Candace. "Thank you." After Jae-hyun left, Minho scrolled through the information, his expression focused. Candace watched him, truly watched him. and felt something shift in her chest. This was the ghost tiger of Seoul, the man who controlled criminal empires, who made politicians nervous, whose name inspired fear across East Asia. And he was studying Jamaican family customs so he could convincingly pretend to be her husband. "You're going to memorize all of that?" she asked weakly. "Already done," Minho replied, setting the tablet aside. "I have a good memory for details." He stood and crossed to her, extending his hand. "Come, we should practice." "Practice what?" "Looking like we're married." Candace took his hand, his palm warm, his grip firm, and let him pull her to her feet. They stood close, closer than they ever had, and Candace was acutely aware of everything. His height, his scent, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. "When your family asks how we met," Minho said, "we'll say it was through a mutual contact. Professional at first, then personal. We'll say I was drawn to your work ethic, your warmth." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "That you made me laugh when I'd forgotten how." "Is that true?" Candace whispered. "Every word," Minho said quietly. A notification chimed on his phone. He glanced at it, then back at her. "The call starts in 10 minutes. Are you ready?" Candace wasn't sure if she was ready for the video call or for the realization currently crashing over her, that she hadn't awakened a monster by asking for this favor. She'd awakened something far more dangerous. A man capable of tenderness. A man who noticed everything about her. A man who was about to prove that the ghost tiger of Seoul could be whatever he needed to be, including the husband she desperately invented. "Ready," Candace said, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Minho's hand tightened around hers. "Then let's show your family," he said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "What convinced you to stay in Seoul?" The days between Minho's agreement and Saturday blurred together in a series of moments that felt both surreal and dangerously intimate. Tuesday evening, they sat in his office as he quizzed her like a detective preparing for interrogation. "How did we meet?" Minho asked, his notepad open, his pen poised. "Through work," Candace recited. "You needed someone trustworthy for your home. A mutual contact recommended me." "And when did professional become personal?" Candace hesitated. They'd gone over this, but saying it out loud still felt strange. 3 months after I started working here. You noticed I was homesick. You asked about Jamaica." She paused. "You made me feel seen." Minho's pen stilled. His eyes lifted to hers, and something flickered in their depths, something that made her wonder if they were still pretending. "Good," he said quietly. "That's believable. Is it true?" The question slipped out before Candace could stop it. "Which part?" "Any of it." Minho leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I noticed you were homesick in your second week. You touched that small Jamaican flag in your room every morning like it was a lifeline." His voice softened. "And yes, I wanted to make you feel seen." Candace's throat tightened. This wasn't supposed to feel real. Wednesday, they practiced physical proximity. "Your family will expect us to be comfortable together," Minho explained as they stood in the living room, late afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Married couples have a specific ease." He reached for her hand. Candace's breath caught as his fingers interlaced with hers, his palm warm, his grip gentle but sure. It was such a simple gesture, something couples did without thinking. But standing there with Minho Choi, the ghost tiger of Seoul, holding her hand like she was precious, Candace felt electricity shoot up her arm. "Too stiff," Minho murmured, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "Relax." "I'm trying," Candace whispered. "Look at me." She did. His dark eyes held hers, and for a moment, the world contracted to just this. His hand in hers, his attention focused entirely on her, the way he looked at her like she was the only person who mattered. "Better," he said softly. "Your family will believe it if you believe it." The problem was, Candace was starting to believe it. Thursday morning, she found a box outside her door. Inside was another outfit, this one more casual than the burgundy dress. Dark jeans that fit perfectly, a soft cream blouse with delicate embroidery, and a beautiful scarf in shades of gold and green that reminded her of Jamaica's flag. The note, in Minho's handwriting, "In case they want to see you relaxed at home." Candace held the scarf to her chest, something warm and dangerous blooming inside her. He'd thought of everything. Not just the practical details, but the emotional ones, choosing colors that would make her feel connected to home, selecting styles that made her feel beautiful without feeling like someone else. She tried on the outfit and stared at her reflection. She looked like someone who'd been chosen, someone who mattered, someone who a man like Minho Choi might actually want. The thought terrified her. That evening, Jae-hyun found her in the kitchen preparing tea. "Miss Davis," he said quietly, his weathered face serious. May I speak frankly? Candace nodded, setting down the kettle. The boss doesn't do anything halfway, Jae-hyun said, his voice low. I've worked for him for 8 years. I've seen him negotiate with Yakuza, outsmart rival syndicates, survive assassination attempts. He paused. But I've never seen him like this. Like what? Invested. Jae-hyun's eyes held a warning. When Min-ho Choi decides he's involved in something or with someone he's involved. Completely. There's no casual with him. Candace's heart hammered. It's just pretend. Just for my family. Is it? Jae-hyun asked gently. Because from where I'm standing, the only person still pretending is you. He left before Candace could respond, his words echoing in the empty kitchen. Friday night. Final rehearsal. They stood in Min-ho's bedroom, the one room in the penthouse Candace rarely entered, in front of a full-length mirror. The space was masculine and minimalist. Dark furniture, crisp blinds, nothing unnecessary. But personal touches revealed themselves in small details. A photo of what looked like his grandmother on the nightstand. Books in Korean and English stacked neatly. A traditional Korean painting on one wall. They might ask to see our room, Min-ho had explained. We should be prepared. Now they stood side by side, their reflections staring back. Min-ho in a casual black sweater, his tattoos visible at his collar and wrists. Candace in the cream blouse and jeans, the gold and green scarf draped around her shoulders. They looked like a couple. Put your hand on my arm, Min-ho instructed softly. Like you're comfortable touching me. Candace complied, her palm resting on his forearm. Through the thin fabric, she could feel the warmth of his skin, the solid strength of muscle, the slight texture of the tattoo beneath. Now smile, he said. Like you're happy I'm here. She tried, but her smile felt forced. Candace! Min-ho turned to face her fully, his hand settling gently on her shoulders. What are you afraid of? That they'll see through us, she whispered. That they'll know I'm lying. Or, Min-ho said quietly, his dark eyes searching hers, you're afraid they'll believe it, and then you'll have to face what that means. Candace's breath caught. What does it mean? It means, he said, his voice dropping to something intimate, dangerous, that for the past week, we've been practicing something that stopped feeling like practice days ago. His hand slid from her shoulders down her arms, leaving trails of heat. He turned her gently back toward the mirror, positioning himself behind her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence like gravity. Look, he murmured near her ear. In the reflection, they were devastating together. His height to her curves, his danger to her warmth, his intensity to her softness. He looked at her like she was something rare and worth protecting. She looked at him like he was both her greatest fear and her deepest wish. That, Min-ho said softly, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror, is what your family will see. Not a lie. The truth. What truth? Candace's voice came out barely a whisper. Min-ho's hand came up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. That I notice you, Candace Ann Davis, he said quietly. That I have from the beginning. That pretending to be your husband is the easiest role I've ever played, because it's the only thing I've wanted to be real. In the mirror, Candace watched her own eyes widen. Watched the ghost tiger of soul look at her with an expression she finally recognized. Want. Raw and honest and terrifying. Tomorrow, Min-ho said, stepping back but holding her gaze in the reflection. We stop pretending we're pretending. Candace couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Could only stand there as the man who was supposed to be her fake husband walked away, leaving her with the devastating realization that Jae-hyun had been right. The only person still pretending was her, and tomorrow, when they faced her family together, that pretense would shatter completely. Saturday arrived with the weight of inevitability. Candace sat at Min-ho's desk, her laptop open, her hands trembling as she adjusted the camera angle. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows framed Seoul's skyline, impressive enough to suggest success without being ostentatious. Breathe, Min-ho murmured from beside her, just out of frame. He'd positioned himself perfectly, close enough to enter smoothly, far enough to let her greet her family first. I can't do this, Candace whispered. Yes, you can. His hand found hers beneath the desk, squeezing once. I'm right here. The incoming call notification chimed. Candace's finger hovered over accept, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Then Min-ho's thumb brushed across her knuckles, grounding, reassuring, and she clicked. Her screen exploded with faces. Candace! Multiple voices shouted at once, overlapping in joyful chaos. Her mother's face dominated the center, Patricia Davis. 58 but looking ageless, her locks wrapped in a colorful head wrap, her smile wide and warm. Beside her sat Miss Iris, Candace's grandmother, regal at 79 with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Other squares filled with familiar faces. Her brother Andre, lanky and protective at 16. Her cousin Shanice calling from London. Uncle Winston from Toronto. Aunt Margaret from Atlanta. "Baby girl!" her mother exclaimed. "Look at you, you're glowing." "Hi, Mama," Candace managed, her voice thick with emotion. 8 months had felt like 8 years. "So where is he?" Miss Iris demanded, cutting straight through pleasantries. "This man you've been hiding from us?" This was it. Candace glanced to her right. "He's here." Minho moved into frame with the fluid confidence of someone who'd commanded rooms full of dangerous men. He'd dressed perfectly, the charcoal sweater that made him look sophisticated but approachable. His platinum hair styled but not severe. His tattoos visible but not threatening. He smiled, and it was warm, genuine, devastating. "Good afternoon," he said, his Korean accent adding charm to his English. "Mrs. Davis, Miss Iris, everyone, it's an honor to finally meet you all." The screen went momentarily silent, then erupted. "Oh my lord, Candace," Shanice squealed from London. "You didn't say he was gorgeous." "Lord have mercy." Aunt Margaret fanned herself in Atlanta, but it was her mother's expression that made Candace's chest tighten. Patricia's eyes had filled with tears, her hand pressed to her heart like she was witnessing a miracle. "Young man," Miss Iris said, her voice carrying the authority of matriarchs everywhere. "What's your name?" "Minho Choi, ma'am." He placed his hand over his heart in a gesture of respect. "I understand in your culture, respecting elders is paramount. Please know that I hold you and your family in the highest regard." Miss Iris's stern expression softened slightly. "Korean?" "Yes, ma'am. Born in Busan, raised between there and Seoul." "And how did you meet my granddaughter?" Minho's hand found Candace's on camera natural, easy, like they'd done it 1,000 times. "Through work. A mutual contact recommended her for a position in my home. I noticed immediately that she was different, dedicated, warm, genuine." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "It took me 3 months to work up the courage to ask her to dinner." 3 months? Andre's voice cut in, skeptical. "Man, what took you so long?" Mina smiled. "Your sister is intimidating when she wants to be, and I didn't want to be disrespectful." He looked at Candace, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. But she was worth the wait. "What do you do, Minho?" Uncle Winston asked. "For work? Import-export business," Minho said smoothly, the rehearsed answer they'd practiced. "International trade, primarily across Asia. It keeps me busy, but I always make time for Candace." "He works too hard," Candace added, finding her voice. "I have to remind him to eat sometimes. And she cooks for me," Minho said, his smile intimate. "Even though that's not her job. She just takes care of people. It's who she is." Patricia pressed both hands to her heart now, openly crying. "Baby, he speaks about you like you're a blessing." "Because she is, Mrs. Davis," Minho said simply. Andre leaned forward, his teenage face suspicious. "All right, but for real, what are your intentions? My sister left everything to go to Korea. You better be treating her right." Minho's expression grew serious, meeting Andre's challenge directly. "Your sister works harder than anyone I've ever met. She's sacrificed her own dreams to support your family, and she never complains." His hand tightened around Candace's. "My intention is to make sure she never has to sacrifice again. That she's supported, protected, and valued the way she deserves." The video call went quiet. Then Miss Iris spoke, her voice carrying weight. "Minho Choi, you have my blessing." Candace's vision blurred with tears. This was too real, too perfect. Everything she'd wanted them to see, everything she'd hoped they'd believe, except it wasn't supposed to feel like this. Minho wasn't supposed to look at her like she was his entire world. Her family wasn't supposed to be this happy. She wasn't supposed to wish this was real. "Thank you for making our daughter happy," Patricia said through tears. "Thank you for..." "Candace." The voice that cut through was male, angry, and devastatingly familiar. Candace's blood turned to ice. On screen, the family's joyful expressions shifted to confusion as someone forced their way into view behind Patricia and Miss Iris, someone Candace hadn't seen in 2 years but whose face still haunted nightmares. Dorian Reed. Tall, handsome in a way that now looked cruel, his eyes hard with something possessive and furious. "Dorian?" Patricia turned, startled. "What are you doing here?" Came to see Aunt Patricia, he said, but his eyes were locked on the screen. On Candace. Imagine my surprise hearing about Candace's new husband. The word dripped with venom. Dorian, this isn't the time, Candace started. Oh, I think it's the perfect time. Dorian moved closer to the camera, his smile sharp. Minho Choi, right? Import-export? He laughed, harsh and mocking. That's what he told you? That's what you believed? Candace's stomach dropped. Dorian, stop, she whispered. Your husband, Dorian continued, pulling out his phone and holding it up to the camera, is the head of the Hwarang Syndicate, one of Korea's most powerful crime organizations. Look, I pulled up articles, police reports, everything. The screen filled with shocked faces. That's not... Candace tried, but her voice broke. He's a criminal, Candace. Dorian's voice rose. A gang boss. And you're what, his maid? His victim? Did he force you into this? No. Candace stood, her chair scraping back, but the damage was done. She could see it in her mother's face, the joy crumbling into horror. In Miss Iris's eyes, the blessing turning to betrayal. In Andre's expression, the trust shattering into anger. Candace, is this true? Patricia's voice trembled. Beside her, Minho sat perfectly still. But when Candace glanced at him, she saw the transformation. The warmth drained from his eyes, replaced by something glacial and deadly. The ghost tiger had returned. Baby, answer me, her mother begged. Is he a criminal? Candace opened her mouth, but nothing came out. What could she say? The truth would confirm their worst fears. A lie would make everything worse. I knew it, Dorian spat. She can't even deny it. Everyone, please, Candace tried. How could you? Andre's voice cracked. How could you lie to us about being married to a mobster? I can explain. Candace. Miss Iris's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. End this call. Right now. Grandmother, please. Now. The screen went black. The penthouse fell into crushing silence. Candace stared at her empty laptop screen, her reflection staring back, mascara running, face crumbling, the beautiful lie she'd built collapsing around her. A sob tore from her throat. She turned to Minho, expecting anger or blame. Instead, she found something infinitely worse. Cold calculation. The man who'd held her hand and charmed her family was gone. In his place sat the ghost tiger of soul, eyes like black ice, jaw set in a way that promised violence. Minho, Dorian Reed, he said quietly, his voice lethal. Tell me everything about him. What? Minho's eyes finally met hers, and Candace saw the truth. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. Candace couldn't breathe. The empty laptop screen blurred through her tears, her grandmother's final words echoing like a death sentence. End this call, right now. She'd lost them. In one catastrophic moment, she'd lost everything: her family's trust, their respect, their love. 8 months of lies had imploded in front of everyone who mattered, and now they thought she was what? A victim? A fool? A woman who'd married a criminal and hidden it like a dirty secret? A sob ripped from her chest, then another, until she was shaking with the force of it. Candace. Minho's voice cut through her spiral low, controlled, terrifyingly calm. She looked up at him through tears, expecting anger, expecting him to tell her this was her fault, that she'd brought chaos to his carefully ordered world. Instead, she found something that made her breath catch. Cold fury, but not directed at her. I will fix this, Minho said quietly. You can't. Candace choked out. They know. Everyone knows. My family will be protected. Minho stood, pulling his phone from his pocket with the precision of someone preparing for war. Dorian Reed just made a fatal mistake. Minho, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. His eyes met hers, black ice and lethal focus. He didn't expose me to save you. He did it to hurt you. And now, his jaw tightened. He's a problem I'm going to solve. Before Candace could respond, Minho's phone rang. He answered in rapid Korean, his voice dropping into a tone that made her skin prickle with fear, not for herself, but for whoever was on the other end disappointing him. He ended the call and immediately made another. Jae-hyun, emergency protocol. I need full surveillance on Dorian Reed location, contacts, communications, everything. A pause. And get me Minjun. Now. Kingston, Jamaica. 30 minutes later. Dorian Reed stood outside Patricia Davis's house, his phone pressed to his ear, satisfaction coiling in his chest. He'd just destroyed Candace's little fantasy. Good. She'd left Jamaica 2 years ago, claiming she needed space and time to figure things out. But Dorian knew the truth. She'd run from him. Run from a relationship he'd invested in. Run from a future he'd planned. And then she'd had the audacity to move to Korea, find some rich criminal, and play happy while he'd spent 2 years thinking about her. Not anymore. Hello? The voice on the phone was rough, Korean-accented English. Is this the Hansong Syndicate? Dorian asked, reading from the contact information he'd found on a dark web forum for rival Korean gangs. Who wants to know? Someone with information about Minho Choi, Dorian said, his smile sharp. Information about his weakness. There was a pause, then. Keep talking. The ghost tiger has a foreign maid. Jamaican woman named Candace Davis. He just pretended to be her husband on a video call to impress her family. Dorian's voice dripped with malice. He's emotionally compromised. And her family? They're all right here in Kingston, unprotected. Another pause. Longer this time. What do you want? To see Minho Choi brought down, Dorian said simply. He took something from me. I want him to know what that feels like. We'll be in touch, the voice said. Then the line went dead. Dorian pocketed his phone, satisfaction warming his chest. Candace would learn. You didn't leave Dorian Reed without consequences. Seoul, Minho's penthouse. 1 hour later. Candace sat on the couch, wrapped in shock. As Minho's penthouse transformed into a military command center, Jae-hyun had arrived with 3 other men all armed, all wearing expressions of lethal focus. They'd set up laptops on the dining table. Tablets glowing with information Candace couldn't read from her position. Minho stood at the center of it all, speaking rapid Korean, his voice a blade cutting through chaos. Boss, Minjun called from his laptop. We intercepted communications. Hansong Syndicate. Someone contacted them about Candace's family. Candace's blood froze. When? Minho's voice went deadly quiet. 40 minutes ago. They're discussing options for leverage against you. Leverage. Minho's hands curled into fists. They want to use her family. It appears so. Candace stood on shaking legs. What does that mean? Minho turned to her, and she saw something in his expression that terrified her. Guilt mixed with resolve. It means, he said quietly, Dorian didn't just expose me. He told my enemies where to find your family. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they hit like a physical blow. No, Candace whispered. No, they wouldn't. The Hansong Syndicate has been waiting for an opportunity to hurt me for 3 years, Minho said, moving to her. They just got handed one. His hands settled on her shoulders, grounding her. But they won't succeed. I promise you. How can you stop them? They're in Jamaica and you're everywhere. Minho's eyes held hers. Candace, I'm not just powerful in Seoul. I have connections across the Caribbean, across Asia, across the world. If I need to protect your family, I will. He turned back to his men. Jae-hyun, I need security teams on the ground in Kingston within 6 hours. Contract with our associates in Miami, they can reach Jamaica fastest. How many men? However many it takes. Minho's voice was steel. I want Patricia Davis, Miss Iris and Andre Davis, in protective custody by nightfall, discreet but absolute. No one gets near them. Sir, that's going to require significant resources. I don't care what it costs. Minho's tone silenced all objection. Do it. He turned to Minjun. Track Dorian Reed. I want to know every move he makes, everyone he contacts. If he breathes wrong, I want to know. Already on it, boss. And get me a line to Jamaica's National Security Minister. I need to call in a favor. Candace stared, her mind struggling to process what she was witnessing. In less than 2 hours, Minho had mobilized an international operation, security teams, government contacts, surveillance networks, all for her family. Minho, she managed. This is too much. He came to her, his expression softening slightly. No, this is necessary. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Dorian made your family targets because of me, because you asked me to be your husband, even for pretend. His voice dropped. That makes them my responsibility, my family to protect. But they hate me now, Candace whispered. They think they're in shock, Minho said gently. They'll understand once the danger has passed, once they're safe. His eyes held hers. And they will be safe, Candace. I swear it. Boss, Jae-hyun called. First security team is wheels up from Miami in 30 minutes. They'll reach Kingston by evening. Good. I want eyes on all 3 primary targets, Patricia, Iris, Andre. If Hansong makes a move, our people stop them. Permanently. The casual way, he said permanently, sent chills down Candace's spine. This was the ghost tiger. Not the man who'd charmed her family or held her hand with tenderness. This was the criminal empire in full force, deployed like a weapon, and all of it focused on protecting people who now hated her. Why? The question burst out of Candace. Why are you doing all this? Minho's attention returned to her, absolute and unwavering. Because you asked me to be your husband, he said simply. And I don't do anything halfway. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. What? Candace asked. Han Song operatives just purchased plane tickets to Kingston. His eyes met hers, and Candace saw the promise of violence there. They're planning to move tonight. Then so are we, Minho said, his voice dropping into something lethal. He turned to his assembled team. Change of plans. I'm going to Jamaica personally. The room went silent. Boss, Jaehyun said carefully. That's not protocol. You don't. I'm going, Minho repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. He looked at Candace. We're going. You, me, and enough security to make sure nothing happens to anyone you love. Candace's breath caught. You'd do that? Fly to Jamaica? I'd burn the world down to keep them safe, Minho said quietly. Because they're yours. And what's yours? His hand found hers again, squeezing. Is mine to protect. Around them, his empire mobilized. And Candace realized with terrifying clarity. The one-day husband she'd desperately invented had just declared war on anyone who threatened her family. The ghost tiger was hunting. And heaven help anyone in his way. Hold on, did you subscribe yet? Because trust me, what's about to happen will blow your mind. Hit that button. Drop a comment telling me if you think Candace's family will forgive her. And let's get to 1,000 subscribers together. My friend said it was impossible, but you're making it happen. Now let's see how Minho handles this. The private jet cut through darkness at 40,000 feet. Candace sat in the leather seat, numb, watching Minho command his empire from the air. He'd barely stopped moving since they'd boarded, phone pressed to his ear, laptop open, his voice switching seamlessly between Korean, English, and what sounded like Japanese. She'd never seen him like this. The man who'd charmed her family was gone. So was the one who'd held her hand with tenderness. This was the ghost tiger in his element. Cold, calculating, absolutely ruthless. I don't care if the minister is sleeping, Minho said into his phone, his Korean accent sharp with authority. Wake him. Tell him Minho Choi is calling in his debt. I need Jamaican police cooperation, and I need it in the next hour. He ended the call and immediately started another. Jaehyun. Status update. Across from Candace, Jaehyun sat with his own laptop, coordinating from the jet. Our Miami team landed in Kingston 20 minutes ago. They've established surveillance on Patricia Davis's residence. No Hansong activity yet, but what? Minho's voice went deadly quiet. We lost track of 2 Hansong operatives at Miami International. They boarded a flight to Kingston 3 hours ago. Jaehyun's face was grim. They're already on the ground, boss. The cabin temperature seemed to drop. Find them, Minho said, each word precisely controlled. I want their locations, their contacts, their plans. And get our people to Patricia's house now. I want her, Miss Iris, and Andre in protective custody within the hour, willing or not. Sir, if they resist, then we explain the situation. Minho's eyes flashed. But they don't stay exposed. Not for one more minute. He hung up and made another call, this one in rapid Japanese. Candace caught only fragments, something about routes, extraction, payment. When he finished, he immediately dialed again. This is bigger than I thought, Candace whispered, the words escaping unbidden. Minho's attention snapped to her, and for a moment, she saw the ruthlessness in his eyes, the same look that had probably sentenced men to death. Then it softened, just slightly. It's as big as it needs to be, he said quietly. Over the next hour, Candace watched the ghost tiger operate. He called in favors from people whose names she recognized from news reports, politicians, diplomats, business magnates who definitely weren't entirely legitimate. He moved money through accounts with casual mentions of 6- and 7-figure transfers. He coordinated security teams across 3 countries like chess pieces, and he did it all with terrifying calm. Boss, Minjun's voice crackled through the laptop. We've intercepted Hansong communications. They're planning to grab Andre Davis first, he's the easiest target. School route, limited security. Candace's blood turned to ice. Andre? Minho's jaw tightened. Time frame? They're moving in 4 hours. Sunrise in Kingston, then we move in 3. Minho's voice was steel. Get our people to his school. I want a perimeter established. Armed presence. If Hansong gets within 50 feet of that boy, eliminate the threat. Eliminate? Candace gasped. Minho met her eyes. Yes. The single word carried the weight of violence, casual, assured, non-negotiable. This was who he was, not the man who'd memorized her family's names or chosen a scarf in Jamaica's colors. This was the criminal Soul feared, the boss who'd built an empire on ruthlessness, and he was deploying all of it for her family. I'm getting another update, Jae-hyun said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Patricia Davis is refusing to leave her home. She's saying she doesn't understand why Korean men are at her door telling her she's in danger. Candace's chest constricted. She doesn't trust them. She doesn't trust me, Minho corrected quietly. Because of what Dorian revealed. His expression darkened, which puts her at greater risk. Let me talk to her, Candace said suddenly. Please, if I explain. She hung up on you. Then I'll call again, and again, until she listens. Candace's voice strengthened. She's my mother, Minho. She's terrified and confused, and she just found out her daughter lied to her. But she'll listen if I tell her the truth. Minho studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Jae-hyun. Establish a secure line to Patricia Davis. Route it through Candace's phone. Minutes later, Candace's phone rang once, then connected. Mama? Candace's voice cracked. Candace? Her mother's voice was tight with fear and anger. What is happening? There are men at my door saying they're here to protect us from some gang, and I don't— Mama, listen to me. Candace gripped the phone. I lied about being married. I lied about a lot of things, but the danger is real. Minho has enemies, and because of me, they're targeting you and Andre and grandmother. Because of you? Because they want to hurt him by hurting me, by hurting people I love. Tears streamed down Candace's face. Mama, I'm so sorry. For lying, for bringing this to your door, for everything. But please trust the men Minho sent. They're there to protect you. There was a long silence. Is he there? Patricia asked quietly. This Minho? Candace looked at Minho. He held out his hand for the phone. She gave it to him. Mrs. Davis, Minho said, his voice gentle but firm. My name is Minho Choi. Everything your daughter told you about me being a criminal is true. But I give you my word, my men at your door are there for one purpose only, to keep you and your family alive. I'm asking you to trust me when you have no reason to. But I promise you this, I will protect your children with my life. Another silence. Then, you love her, don't you? Minho's eyes met Candace's. More than she knows. Then I'll trust you, Patricia said. But Minho Choi, if anything happens to my family— It won't, Minho said simply. You have my word. He ended the call and handed Candace back her phone. She believes you, Candace whispered. She believes you, Minho corrected. I'm just the monster keeping her safe. You're not a monster. Yes, I am. His voice held no self-pity, just fact. But I'm your monster, and that means your family is untouchable. Jae-hyun's computer beeped urgently. Boss, we have a problem. Dorian Reed just posted Candace's mother's address on social media, tagged it with accusations about you, about Candace being your victim. His face paled. It's going viral in Kingston. Son of a— Minho bit off the curse. How many people have seen it? Thousands. And climbing. Minho's expression went absolutely glacial. Find Dorian Reed. Now. Boss. Now. Minjun's voice came through the laptop minutes later. Located. He's still at Patricia's neighborhood. Looks like he's— recording video. Talking to his phone about exposing corruption and saving Candace from a monster. Minho stood, his movements predatory. Send coordinates to the Miami team. I want Dorian Reed detained. Quietly. Detained? Candace asked. What does that mean? It means— Minho said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He's creating a security risk. For your family, for my operation, for you. His eyes met hers. I'm removing that risk. You can't just kidnap him. Watch me. The words hung in the air, and Candace saw the truth. Minho would do exactly that. Would do worse, if necessary. Because Dorian had made himself a threat, and the ghost tiger eliminated threats. Minho, Candace said softly, this is my fault. All of it. The lie, Dorian's involvement. Your enemies targeting my family. It's because I asked you to pretend. Minho moved to her, kneeling so they were eye level. His hands cupped her face, firm and warm. No, he said quietly. It's my fault for having enemies, for being who I am. His thumb brushed away her tears. But Candace, I would make the same choice again. 1,000 times. Because you asked me. And I've never been able to deny you anything. Why? She whispered. Because somewhere between you humming reggae songs in my kitchen and asking me the most impossible question of my life, I stopped being just the ghost tiger. His forehead touched hers. I became yours. The jet began its descent into Kingston. And outside, in the darkness, two empires prepared to collide. Hanseong operatives hunting for leverage. Minho's forces surrounding Candace's family like an invisible fortress. The war for her family's safety had begun, and Minho Choi intended to win. Dawn broke over Kingston like a judgment. Candace stepped out of the SUV into humid Caribbean air that tasted like home and heartbreak. Around her, Minho's security team moved with military precision, armed, alert, creating a perimeter that transformed her mother's quiet neighborhood into a fortress. Your family is secure, Jae-hyun reported, approaching Minho. Patricia, Miss Iris, and Andre are in the safe house. No Hansong contact. And Dorian Reed? Minho's voice was cold in the tropical heat. Detained. Our team intercepted him 2 blocks from here. Jae-hyun's expression darkened. He was on the phone with someone giving directions. We think he was leading Hansong operatives directly to Patricia's location. Candace's stomach turned. Dorian hadn't just exposed Minho. He'd actively tried to bring danger to her mother's doorstep. Where is he? Minho asked. Warehouse near the port. Secure location. Jae-hyun glanced at Candace, then back to Minho. What do you want done with him? Minho was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Candace, and she saw something unexpected in his eyes. Not fury, but understanding. That's not my decision, he said quietly. Candace blinked. What? Dorian Reed isn't my problem to solve. He's yours. Minho moved closer, his voice dropping. You can stay here. Let me handle him. He'll disappear, and you'll never have to think about him again. The casual way he said disappear sent chills through her. Or, Minho continued, you can confront him. Face the man who's been haunting you. Say everything you've needed to say for 2 years. His hand found hers. Your choice, Candace. Either way, he never touches your life again. Candace's heart hammered. Every instinct screamed to let Minho handle it, to stay safe, to avoid the confrontation. But those were the same instincts that had let Dorian control her for years. I want to see him, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Minho studied her face, then nodded. Then I'll take you. The warehouse. The building smelled of salt water and rust. Candace followed Minho through the dim space, flanked by Jae-hyun and 2 other guards. Their footsteps echoed off concrete, each step bringing her closer to a confrontation she'd run 7,000 miles to avoid. They found him in the center of the warehouse. Dorian Reed sat in a metal chair, his hands zip-tied behind him, his handsome face split between fury and fear. 2 of Minho's men stood nearby, stone-faced and armed. When Dorian saw Candace, his expression transformed possessive hunger mixed with rage. Candace, he called out, his voice echoing. Thank God. Tell them to let me go. Tell them this is a mistake. Candace stopped 10 feet away, her hands trembling. It's not a mistake, she said quietly. Baby, please. Dorian's tone shifted to the one she remembered, warm, persuasive, designed to make her doubt herself. These people kidnapped me. This man, he jerked his head toward Minho. He's dangerous. He's manipulating you. I was trying to save you. By telling a Korean gang where to find my mother? Candace's voice shook, but not with fear, with anger. By posting her address online? I was exposing the truth, Dorian insisted. You're living with a criminal, Candace, working for him like you're nothing. I couldn't just stand by and watch. Watch what? Candace cut him off. Watch me live my life? Make my own choices? Your choices are getting you hurt. No. Candace stepped closer, and she felt Minho's presence behind her, solid, protective, but letting her lead. Your choices are hurting people. You tracked me to Korea. You ruined my family reunion. You contacted Minho's enemies and put my mother, my grandmother, my brother in danger. Her voice rose. All because I left you. You didn't just leave. Dorian's mask slipped, revealing the possessive anger beneath. You ran. Without explanation. Without giving me a chance. I didn't owe you an explanation. After 2 years together, after everything I did for you, there it was, the manipulation she'd lived with, the constant reminder of his sacrifices, the guilt trips disguised as love. Everything you did for me came with strings, Candace said, her voice gaining strength. You helped with my mother's bills but held it over my head. You supported my dreams, then made me feel guilty for pursuing them. You said you loved me, but what you loved was control. That's not... You told me I'd never succeed without you, Candace continued, years of suppressed truth pouring out, that I was too naive, too trusting, too weak to survive on my own. You made me believe I needed you. Her hands clenched into fists. And when I finally left, when I finally found the courage to choose myself, you couldn't handle it. I came here to protect you. You came here to punish me? Candace's voice cracked with emotion. Because I proved you wrong. I survived without you. I built a life without you, and instead of letting me go, you tried to destroy it. Dorian's expression twisted. Him? He spat toward Minho. You call this a life? Being a maid to some Korean gangster? You left me for this? I didn't leave you for anything, Candace said quietly. I left you for me. The words hung in the warehouse air like a revelation. I left because staying meant losing myself, Candace continued. Because your love felt like drowning. Because every day with you, I became smaller, quieter, less. She took a breath. And yes, I'm a maid. I clean houses. I work for a man who built an empire on things I don't fully understand. But Dorian, her voice strengthened. He sees me, the real me, not the version you tried to create. He's using you. He flew to Jamaica to protect my family from danger you created. Candace shot back. He mobilized an international security operation because I asked him to pretend to be my husband for one day. He gave me a choice about confronting you instead of just making you disappear. She stepped closer. You talk about love, but Minho showed me what respect looks like. Dorian's face contorted with rage. You think he'll choose you? You're nothing to him. A maid he's probably sleeping with until he gets bored. Enough. Minho's voice cut through the warehouse like a blade. He moved forward, positioning himself beside Candace, his presence a wall of protection. You don't speak to her, Minho said quietly, his Korean accent sharpening each word. You don't look at her. You don't think about her. He leaned down slightly, his eyes meeting Dorian's with lethal promise. Because if you ever come near Candace or her family again, I won't give her the choice next time. I'll handle you myself. Understand? Dorian paled, finally recognizing the predator in front of him. I understand, he whispered. Minho straightened, then looked at Candace. Are you finished? Candace stared at the man who'd haunted her nightmares. The man who'd made her feel small and dependent. The man who'd tried to destroy her new life out of spite. And she felt nothing. No fear, no anger, just relief. I'm finished, she said. Good. Minho nodded to his men. Take him to the authorities. Charges. Stalking, harassment, conspiracy to endanger. Make sure they stick. As Dorian was hauled to his feet, he made one last desperate attempt. Candace, please. But she was already walking away. Out of the warehouse. Out of his reach. Out of the prison she'd built in her own mind where his words still had power. Outside, sunlight hit her face, and Candace breathed deeply free air, clean air, air that didn't taste like manipulation and control. Minho emerged behind her, giving her space but staying close. You okay? He asked quietly. Candace turned to him, tears streaming down her face but not sad tears, liberating ones. I'm better than okay, she said. I'm free. Minho smiled, something warm and genuine that transformed his face. Yes, he said softly. You are. He reached for her hand, and Candace took it not because she needed protection, but because she wanted to. Because the woman who'd walked into that warehouse wasn't the same one walking out. She was stronger, braver, and finally, completely her own. Soul. 3 days later. The penthouse felt different when they returned. Candace stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Soul's lights blink to life as dusk settled over the city. Behind her, the space that had been her workplace for 8 months now felt like something else entirely, though she couldn't quite name what. Her family was safe. Minho had arranged temporary relocation for them to a secure property in Ocho Rios, complete with security and an apology Candace had delivered in person. Her mother had cried. Miss Iris had grudgingly admitted that the Korean boy did right. Andre had asked 1,000 questions about Minho's import-export business that Candace had carefully deflected. Dorian was facing charges in Jamaica, stalking, conspiracy, endangerment. He'd be occupied with legal battles for months, possibly years. The Hanseong syndicate had backed off after Minho made it clear that targeting Candace's family meant war. Whatever message he'd sent through back channels had been effective enough that his intelligence network confirmed a complete withdrawal. Everything was resolved. So why did Candace feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff? You haven't been sleeping. Minho's voice came from behind her, soft, observant as always. Candace didn't turn. How can you tell? I notice everything about you. He moved closer, and she saw his reflection appear in the glass beside hers. He'd changed from his usual tailored suits into something casual, dark joggers and a simple black t-shirt that revealed the full extent of his tattoos. You touch the Jamaican flag in your room 3 times instead of once. You hum slower songs. You drink tea at midnight. Despite everything, Candace smiled. You're still watching me. I never stopped. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Minho moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching the city together. Your family wants you to come home, he said quietly. Patricia called while you were showering, she said. She said they understand now. Why you lied. What you were protecting them from. He paused. She wants you back in Jamaica. Candace's chest tightened. What did you tell her? That the choice is yours. Minho's reflection met her eyes in the glass. I told her I'd pay for your flight whenever you're ready, that I'd make sure you got home safe. That's it? What else should I have said? Candace turned to face him. You could have told her you need me here, that I work for you. But I don't need you here as my maid, Minho said quietly. I need you here as... He stopped, jaw tightening as if the words were physically difficult to speak. As what? Candace pressed, her heart hammering. Minho was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw in a way she'd never heard. When you asked me to be your husband for one day, he said, his eyes holding hers. I wasn't pretending. The confession landed between them like a lightning strike. Minho, I've been falling for you since the day you walked into my penthouse, he continued, the words spilling out like he'd been holding them back for months. You hummed while you cleaned, like you were keeping yourself company. You made my coffee exactly how I liked it without being asked twice. You smiled at Jaehyun's terrible jokes and brought warmth to a space that usually feels like a fortress. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You never looked at me like I was a monster. Everyone else in Seoul sees the ghost tiger dangerous, untouchable, someone to fear. But you? His hand came up slowly, cupping her face with infinite gentleness. You looked at me like I was just a man, like I was worth more than my reputation. Candace's breath caught. I didn't know you noticed me. I noticed everything, Minho said. The way you touch that flag every morning like it's a prayer. The way you sing reggae songs under your breath when you think no one's listening. The way you're strong enough to work yourself to exhaustion for people you love without complaint. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. You bring calm to my darkness, Candace. Light to a life that's been nothing but shadows. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Why didn't you say anything? Because you were off limits, Minho said simply. You worked for me. You came from a world so different from mine we might as well have lived on different planets. And I didn't have the right to want you. His expression shifted, vulnerable in a way that made her heart ache. But then you asked me the impossible. You asked me to be your husband, even for pretend, and I couldn't say no. Because you wanted it to be real, Candace whispered. Because I wanted you to be real. Minho's forehead touched hers. Every moment we practiced, every time I held your hand or memorized your family's names or flew to Jamaica to protect them, I wasn't pretending, Candace. I was showing you who I could be, who I wanted to be. For you. Candace's hands came up to grip his shirt, anchoring herself. I was terrified, she admitted, her voice breaking. Terrified that this was all pretend, that you were just doing me a favor. That when it was over, you'd go back to being the untouchable ghost tiger, and I'd go back to being invisible. You were never invisible, Minho said fiercely. Not for 1 second. I know that now. Candace looked up at him, seeing the man beneath the reputation, the boy from Busan who'd survived violence and hunger, the boss who commanded empires but noticed when his maid was homesick, the ghost tiger who'd become hers. Minho, I fell for you too. Somewhere between you memorizing Jamaican customs and flying across the world to save my family, I stopped being afraid of what you are and started loving who you are. Candace, I love that you're ruthless and protective, that you notice everything, that you gave me choices when you could have made demands. Her hands moved to his face, feeling the sharp line of his jaw, the warmth of his skin. I love that the most dangerous man in Seoul kneels for me, that the ghost tiger became mine. Minho's eyes darkened with emotion, want, and tenderness, and something deeper that made Candace's breath stop. Say it again, he whispered. I love you, Candace said, the words feeling like freedom. Minho closed the distance between them. The kiss was everything at once, raw and gentle, desperate and tender, the collision of two people who'd been circling each other for months without admitting what they both knew. His hands slid into her hair, cradling her head like she was precious. Her fingers gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, needing more. The kiss deepened, and Candace tasted truth, no more pretending, no more lies. Just this impossible reality that the man she'd asked to be her fake husband had become the realest thing in her life. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Minho rested his forehead against hers. "I don't want you as my maid," he said quietly. Candace's heart stuttered. "What?" "I want you as my partner. My equal." His eyes held hers, intense and sure. "I want to wake up to you humming in my kitchen because you want to be there, not because you're paid to be. I want to take you to Jamaica, not as your employer, but as the man who loves you. I want," his voice cracked slightly, "I want the one day you asked for to become forever." Tears streamed down Candace's face, but she was smiling. "Is this the ghost tiger proposing to his maid?" she asked, her voice trembling with joy. "No." Minho smiled, something soft and real that transformed his face. "This is Minho Choi asking Candace Ann Davis if she'll give him the privilege of loving her. Honestly. Completely. For real." Candace kissed him again, pouring every unspoken feeling into it, gratitude and love, and the bone-deep certainty that this dangerous, impossible man was hers. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "To all of it. Yes." The fake marriage dissolved in that moment, and something infinitely more precious took its place. Something real, something that had always been there, hidden beneath pretense and fear, something that would last far longer than one day. Ocho Rios, Jamaica. 2 weeks later, the beach house Minho had secured for Candace's family was nothing like their modest Kingston home, all white stone and ocean views, security discreetly posted but present. Candace stood on the veranda, watching Minho approach her family with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. But this time, there was something different in his posture. Not the ghost tiger's predatory confidence, but genuine nervousness. He was about to face judgment far more terrifying than rival syndicates. He was about to face her mother. "Mrs. Davis," Minho said, stopping a respectful distance away. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Patricia Davis sat in a wicker chair, Miss Iris beside her, Andre standing protectively behind them, 3 generations of family who'd been lied to, endangered, and ultimately saved by the man in front of them. "You flew all the way here just to talk?" Patricia asked, her voice guarded but not hostile. "Yes, ma'am." Minho's hands were clasped in front of him, and Candace realized with a start that they were trembling slightly. "There are things I need to say, truths I need to speak." Miss Iris leaned forward, her sharp eyes assessing. "Then speak, Korean boy." Minho took a breath. "Everything Dorian Reed said about me is true. I am the head of a criminal organization. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made choices that can never be undone." He didn't flinch from the truth. "But I need you to know Candace had nothing to do with any of it. She came to Korea to work, to support you, to build a better life, and she did it with more courage than anyone I've ever met." "She lied to us," Andre said, his young voice tight. "She protected you," Minho corrected gently. "She told you she was married because she couldn't bear for you to see her struggling, because every dollar she sent home mattered more to her than her own dignity." He looked at Candace, and the love in his eyes made her chest ache. "Your sister sacrificed everything for this family, and when her lie caught up to her, she came to me terrified, desperate, and asked for help. And you agreed," Patricia said quietly. "Why?" "Because I'd been in love with her since the day she walked into my home," Minho said simply. "Because she treated me like a human being, when everyone else saw a monster. Because when she asked me to be her husband for one day, I wanted it to be real." The family was silent. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," Minho continued. "I know who I am, what I am, but I'm asking for your understanding." His voice strengthened. "Candace deserves a life where she doesn't have to sacrifice her own happiness, where she's chosen, valued, protected, and I swear to you on everything I have that I will spend the rest of my life making sure she has that." Miss Iris studied him for a long moment. Then she stood, moving with the authority of a woman who'd raised generations. She walked right up to Minho and looked him in the eye. "You love my granddaughter?" "More than my own life," Minho said without hesitation. "And you'll protect her? Even from your own world?" "Especially from my own world." Miss Iris nodded slowly. Then, shockingly, she smiled. "Then you have my blessing, Minho Choi. Don't make me regret it." Patricia stood next, tears streaming down her face. She pulled Minho into an embrace that clearly startled him, but he returned it, his eyes closing with something like relief. "Thank you for saving us," Patricia whispered. "Thank you for seeing my daughter." When she pulled back, Andre stepped forward, still wary, but less hostile. You hurt her, Andre said. And I don't care how powerful you are. I'll find a way to make you pay. Minho smiled. I'd expect nothing less from her brother. They shook hands, and Candace felt something break open in her chest. Years of separation, of lies, of fear, finally healing. Seoul, 1 week later. The rooftop of Minho's penthouse had been transformed. String lights created constellations against the night sky. Candles flickered in glass holders, their flames dancing in the gentle wind. The city sprawled below them, millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of stories. But tonight, only one story mattered. Candace stood at the edge, wearing a simple white dress that Minho had left in her room with a note. Not for pretending, for beginning. Behind her, she heard his footsteps. Candice. She turned, and her breath caught. Minho stood there in a dark suit, his platinum hair catching the string lights, his tattoos visible at his collar, the ghost tiger and the man beautifully merged. But it was his expression that undid her. Nervous and certain all at once, vulnerable and strong, everything she'd fallen in love with. I need to ask you something, he said, moving closer. Again? Candace smiled through sudden tears. This time, Minho said, I'll do it right. And then impossibly, unimaginably, the most feared man in Seoul lowered himself to one knee. Candace's hands flew to her mouth. 8 months ago, Minho said, looking up at her. You walked into my home and changed everything. You brought warmth to my darkness. You treated me like a person when everyone else saw a weapon. You hummed reggae songs and made coffee exactly right and never, not once, made me feel like the monster I'd become. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, with a stone that caught the light like captured starfire. When you asked me to be your husband for one day, I should have said no. Should have protected you from my world, my enemies, my darkness. His voice roughened. But I couldn't, because that one day was all I wanted. To be chosen by you. To be yours. Tears streamed down Candace's face. One day wasn't enough, Minho continued. 1 week wasn't enough. 1 lifetime won't be enough. But I'm asking for it anyway. His dark eyes held hers, infinite and sure. Candace Ann Davis, will you be my wife? Not for pretend. Not as a favor. For real. For always. Yes, Candace whispered. Then louder, with all the certainty in her soul. Yes, yes, yes. Minho slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, like everything about them, and stood, pulling her into his arms. They kissed under Seoul's sky, the ghost tiger and the woman who'd never been invisible, the Mafia boss and the girl from Jamaica who'd asked the impossible and received everything. When they finally broke apart, Minho led her to the edge of the rooftop. Below them, the city pulsed with life, dangerous and beautiful. Just like them. What now? Candace asked, leaning into his warmth. Now, Minho said, his arm wrapping around her waist. We build something real. A life, a home, a future where you're not my maid but my partner, my equal, my wife. And your empire? Will learn to respect you as they respect me, Minho said firmly, because you're mine, and what's mine is untouchable. Candace smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. The ghost tiger domesticated by love. Who would have thought? Not domesticated, Minho corrected, pressing a kiss to her temple. Transformed. By the only person who ever saw past the reputation to the man beneath. They stood there as night deepened. 2 impossible people who'd found each other through lies and danger and a desperate request that became the truest thing either had ever known. The woman who'd thought she was invisible had been seen. The man everyone feared had found peace. And the one day that should have been enough became the beginning of forever. And that's how a one-day lie became a lifetime of love. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers. My best friend said I'd never make it, so let's prove them wrong together. Drop a heart in the comments if you loved Minho and Candace's journey, and tell me, would you have asked the ghost tiger for help? Also, don't forget there's another amazing story waiting for you right now. Click that video on your screen and keep the magic going. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.